Yeah, we met at the entrance.
So that point is our own setup declining.
Very much, sir. I mean, sir, when he brought me to Delhi, 1996. Yes, I'm aware of that. What will be there?
Honorable Governor, Vora Sahab, Dr. Narayan, Dr. Sanjay Diwan. When we meet on an occasion like this, it becomes a veritable confluence of multiple strands of thought. And I would like to begin by referring to the immortal works of the 4-volume autobiography of one of the best-known authors in India, Dr. Harvansh Rai Bachchan, where one of them is entitled Hans Ka Paschim Pravas. There he has referred to his friendship and sense of bonding he had with Acharya Devendra Sharma in 1951 across London and Cambridge. Acharya ji was a visiting fellow at the School of Slavonic and East European Studies, and Bachchan ji was doing his PhD in Cambridge. They were both very deeply in love with their wives. Both the wives of both the gentlemen were in India, so what brought them together was exchange of memories and what it costs to add to learning. Illustratively, many recalls came in, and interestingly, at one place, and many in the world may not know of this, Bachchan ji testifies to the cookery skills of Acharya ji. That what I think is learning about of a complete man. I'm reminded of this biography for many reasons, of which one is that Bachchan ji refers to an Irish girl who came to him to ask him to teach him Hindi. She didn't want to speak in English. And the reason she gave was English has a vocabulary which is overused and insincere, and she cited the word sorry. No prizes for guessing. She had had strong, jilted emotional experiences to get over. Why do I refer to this? I owe an explanation. And the explanation is, whenever a person stands in my shoes in a situation like this, he begins by saying, I'm delighted, I'm obliged, we are all beholden that a person such as the Honorable Governor is here, Dr. Narayan is here, Dr. Diwan is here. I have no choice but to use those words because those words are the only ones which exist in the vocabulary, even though they are oft used to a point of being made stale. I may be forgiven for doing so. I'm happy we are here. I'm happy DK International Foundation, as a registered charity in pursuit of learning, has gathered enough traction, albeit after a decade's struggle, to host such a conclave without registration fees, without advertisements, This is our mission, and I'm glad so many of you have chosen to walk with us. When you go out to fulfill a purpose, work dissolves itself into fulfillment. The trustees of DKIF are conscious of this particular case. They have been supported with great elegance by Maharana Mewar Charitable Foundation. Shri Arvind Singh Ji Mewar, who is a good friend, and I happen to be associated with several of his efforts, wanted to be here because he has been closely associated with this planning, execution, but he couldn't for reasons which I'll read out from a letter which he has signed and sent and wanted it to be read in the presence of the governor. It says, Dr. Professor Vinayshil Ji, this is to thank you for your email dated March 25 updating me on the year-long birth centenary celebrations of Acharya Ji, Devendranath Sharma. I'm happy to note that the celebrations are being well received and are befitting homage to the legacy that Acharya Ji was. I deeply regret not being able to attend the one-day event scheduled for April 21 on 2018 at the Multipurpose Hall of India International Center. Its theme, lifelong learning, is very significant and relevant for our times and age. Please accept my best wishes for the success of this event, and here comes the reason. We are having the Pran Pratishthan religious ceremonies of our new temple in MMP school, also beginning the same day. Kindly excuse me for my absence, for I would have looked forward to being present and interacting with the dignitaries. On my behalf, kindly greet the dignitaries, Sri N.N. Vora, Governor of Jammu and Kashmir, and Sri T.N. Chaturvedi, Dr. Narayan, Dr. Diwan, and all the other participants who have agreed to grace this event. Thank you for your kind invite. My best wishes once again. A brief introduction to the subject, both in my moments of weakness and triumph. I would like to testify to the friendship and support that has nurtured me through some very difficult times and added to my joy in the happier ones. Vora Sahab has done me the honor of walking with me in many seasons across many decades. It has added meaning to my journey. I do not wish to go public with many personal experiences and counsels, which has enriched my own thinking and strengthened my own action. Last evening, he called me and asked me a very basic question. What are the contents of lifelong learning? How is it different from the lifelong learning that some of the universities are talking about? I'm aware, Vora Sahab, that you had the answers better than I could express. You were drawing me out and you were looking for an exchange of thoughts, which I know you relish. But that gives me the occasion of sharing my thoughts with you on what I believe are some of the contents and the distinctions it has with the life of long learning, which has been, unfortunately, to my way of thinking, been confined to updating outdated information which you picked up during your graduate and postgraduate days, which is a useful function, but that's not what we are talking about here. Put simply, lifelong learning, in the way this conclave is conceived, has to be seen as a process which helps to contend with the vicissitudes of life. An example of this journey will help to make this point better than an analytical approach. I refer to Bachchanji, a person who has cast strong influences of many people of my generation. In Madhushala, has written two rubaiyats, Rubaiyat 64 and 65. If you read them together, it is the marking of the beginning of a journey and where the journey could conclude. Permit me to read out the two rubaiyats, they are very brief ones. Sumukhi tumhara sundar mukhi, mujhko kanchan ka pyala, छलक रही है जिसमें माणिक रूप मधुर मादक हाला. मैं ही साकी बनता मैं ही पीने वाला बनता हूं, जहां कहीं मिल बैठे हम तुम, वही हो गई है मधुशाला. Those of you who do not know Hindi, and there are people from Malaysia, UAE, and elsewhere, it's an ode which most of us pass through during some stage of our life, where we believe that finding a beloved and finding time with her is the ultimate elixir and the nectar of life. That's the essence of that rubaiyat. The rubaiyat which follows that rubaiyat is the following. दो दिन में ही मधु पिलाकर ऊब उठी साकी बाला. 2 दिन में ही मधु पुलाकर ऊब उठी साकी बाला, भरकर अब खिसका देती है वह मेरे आगे प्याला। नाज अदा अंदाजों से अब हाय पिलाना दूर हुआ, अब तो कर देती है केवल फर्ज अदाई मधुशाला। In 2 days, and I will not call her a bartender. Madhubala is very different from a bartender. Madhubala is a concert. Madhubala tired in 2 days, and now when I go, she still goes through the motions, but there is no soul to those motions. And this is what life has brought me to. When you traverse from time 1 to time 2, that is the journey of life, with its crests and troughs, and coping with those vicissitudes is lifelong learning. It is this attempt to read meaning to life's experiences that is learning, when you learn to distinguish between disappointments and setbacks. You are a seasoned person. You learn to stay relevant through different life stages, and you keep reinventing yourself. As the Greek proverb says, it is the ghost of Sisyphus forever pushing the stone to the top of the hill. The current educational system is predominantly focused on accessing information, classifying it, storing it, recalling it for use. One of the current versions of this is paraded as analytics, very fashionable. A lot of consulting careers and a lot of consulting companies are surviving on it, and we have no problem with that either. Knowledge distinguished from information is another ball game altogether. Knowledge involves awareness. It leads to better coping strategies, not necessarily solutions. If you notice, the ad world is repleted with companies which call the IT solutions, life solutions. I noticed one which is even talking of marital solutions. With the permission of my wife, I would like to someday apply there and find out where the solutions to marital problem lies. Be that as it may, the third level is the conscious refinement of instincts, which has to do with the arisal of one's consciousness. We have tried in this conclave to cast it into meaning, relevance, and self-renewal. Learning strategies have to be converted into people's practices to enrich employee experience. At least 2 of the panelists have tried to link up Acharyaji's persona to institutional and lifelong learning. You are urged to keep distinguishing between formal education and learning processes to get the best out of this conclave and to contribute. Acharyaji had some very interesting thoughts on lifelong learning. He believed that the mother tongue is the language which the mother teaches the child while breastfeeding him or her. I don't know how many linguists will endorse that view. He believed that if communication was to be effective, it must be simple. Something on which I have received more than a crack on my knuckle from Vora Sahab, where privately after a meeting is over, he would say, "Kabhi kabhi aisa bola karo jisme auron ko samajh mein bhi aa jaya kare." The truth is that as an author, Acharyaji scripted many personal essays. We don't have time to go in it. They are celebrating his contributions across the country, from Kochi to Jabalpur to Mumbai to Patna to Ranchi, you name it. It's coming up in Agra next month. And he says, in one of his personal essays, which is called Khilona, that he sees no difference in the mindset which leads a child to seek a new toy, or a wife to seek a new sari, or himself to seek a book. He ends his personal essay, Khilona, with a query. I wonder if each one has a different preference for a khilona. He was enamored of I.A. Richards' book, The Meaning of Meaning. He found time to teach me Sankhya philosophy from original Sankhya Karika. I have no time to get into it, but the distinction between Satkaryavad and Asatkaryavad is very simply, everything in the world has a logic, and Asatkaryavad, nothing has a logic, there is a randomness. In between the two is our life experiences. Above all, he believed that there are limits to learning. He was firmly of the view that people can learn only an X amount. If you keep pushing them to learn, it will spill like filled container. Many did not know that he was in the habit of living his word, sometimes the hard way. When asked why he did so, his answer was simple: I am being true to myself, I make sense of my life, and that is what this conclave is about. Be it the age of 17 when the sky is only roseate in color, or age of 70 when the color of sky has changed from roseate to deep blue, let's remember both has its own glow. A word about doubting Thomases about this conclave. The group which never accepts anything till it is accepted in the West or abroad. For those who tuned in late, Harvard Business Review group in LinkedIn is talking about lifelong learning. So, to them, no further evidence is needed. If Harvard accepts it, that's the ultimate. Please read Nicholas Markey in it. Let's push it further. Lifelong learning is initiated for National University of Singapore alumni who has launched it in Singapore. For good measure, I decided to produce Dr. Narayan in person, who did us the honor of traveling for this conclave this morning and leaves at 2 o'clock. Who else would do it but a person committed to a cause? And if I can smuggle in a small thought for personal relations. I'm conscious that I stand between you and the presentation of Dr. Narayan, and of course the inaugural thoughts of the governor. To wind up, without sounding abrupt, 2 concluding thoughts. Learning evolves with sound self-assessment and robust reality perception. I don't wish to repeat it, because if you don't get it on the first time, you will never get it on the wings. The second thought, the style is as important as the comment. Maybe India would grow even more strongly as the cradle of blended learning ecosystems, and that's where we chose India International Center as the venue for this function, because under the leadership of Air Marshal Naresh Verma, we have an occasion of having a series of activities which keep the Indian learning alive. It's not just a Bharatnatyam performance, it's not just a recital, it is the idiom. We at DKIF look forward to working together with you in this attempt at self-renewal. Over to you, Dr. Narayan.
Respected Governor Vora Saab, Dr. Gautam, dignitaries on the dais, I am terribly honored to be on the same dais as Governor Vora, because actually in 1997 he brought me to Delhi, taught me the ropes of how to manage issues in Parliament, how to manage the interface between politics and governance, and advised me on so many aspects. And before I talk about anything, I must speak of one small incident where he guided me so closely, I don't even know whether he remembers it. At that time, we had a minister, I don't want to get into names, and I was in the Ministry of Coal. And the coal minister or the minister's somebody relations had misused the Coal India aircraft to go from plane A to plane B. And there was a big furore in Parliament. So Vora Saab called me and said, what are you going to do about it? I said, sir, I have no idea what I should do about it. But the minister is kind of a little bit adamant and wants to say that, okay, nothing doing. And of course, the government at that time had a majority in Parliament, so they stand it out. His advice was, don't do that. Ask the minister to say, sorry, it happened. And it will not happen again. And he said, the way to manage it is, let there be a table, a statement from the minister to say, sorry, I won't do it. I will see that it never happened. But he said, okay, to avoid further hangama and further discussions is, make that statement on a Friday afternoon so that there's very little time left for people to get it. What wonderful advice. What wonderful advice. The minister cavilled a little bit, but then everything went through so smoothly. And that is the kind of guidance that I have looked forward to. I'm really honored to be here. This particular subject, lifelong learning, really, I mean, I have not too many thoughts on it, but I could think about it at two levels. One is at a mundane, practical level. The other is at the conceptual level. At a conceptual level, one can start with what Tennyson says, that all knowledge is an arch wherethrough shines that untraveled world, whose margin fades forever and ever as I move. And that is true. We learn every minute of our lives. We change. We are not what we started. We are part of a journey. And the journey is a journey of learning. And if you take this thought forward, this thought recurs not only in our scriptures but also in Western philosophy. Because communication of knowledge, as Wittgenstein said, is limited by language. What I am saying and what I am communicating are two totally different things. What I am communicating is what you are understanding. What I am saying is what I think I want you to understand. And Wittgenstein says the language is a limiting factor in the transference of any idea. And he also says that the proposition, you make a proposition, the proposition is only a picture of reality. It's not the reality itself. It's a picture of reality. But the reality, to glean that reality, that communication, which is the bridge, which is the language, is the bridge, that communication converts that proposition into reality. And if you jump from there 2000 years ago and go back to Taittiriya Upanishad, in Taittiriya Upanishad, there is Bhrigu, who is asking his father, Varuna, Kimeva pratyaksham brahmasi? What is true reality? Tell me. Varunam pitaram upasasara kimeva pratyaksham brahmasi. And he tells him, look, I cannot communicate to you. I cannot make a proposition to you which will be a picture of reality, Wittgenstein. You have to learn it yourself. There is no language by which I can convey. Only by prayer, tapastaptva. Go out into the forest and pray. I'll just carry this thought forward to see how beautifully it is described. So Bhrigu goes to the forest, prays for it, says 1,000 years, comes back and says, I have discovered the true Brahma. And he starts off by saying, Annam pratyaksham brahmasi. So it's food. Because all life is based on food. And without food, you are nothing. And if you are nothing, there is no reality itself. So, the father just turns to him and said, I suggest you go back and pray some more. And next time he comes back and says, it's not annam, it's apaha, water. Because water sustains everything. Without water, there's no life, there's no reality. And this goes on. This goes on for about 5 or 6 cycles in the Upanishad. And finally, after prayer, Bhrigu does not come back. So Varuna, his father, goes in search of him. And he goes in search of him. He finds him in a trance of ecstasy. He says, I have realized. I have no need to come back to ask you anything. So knowledge, real learning, even in our scriptures and even in Western philosophy, has to come from inner understanding, not just from communication, not just from absorbing what is around you, but also from evolution from within yourself. And that, I think, is something which we forget. We walk away from a classroom, we walk away from a seminar, we walk away from a newspaper article. But how much do we internalize it? How much do we cogitate about it? I think these are some conceptual thoughts that I think we need to bear in mind. And why is it important today? It is very, very important today. I mean, I'll jump to a little area of mine, which is a study of economics. It's very, very important today because the kind of changes that are happening in the world are not governed by the kind of knowledge that is available in these realms. I'd like you to read last week's Economist, and there's an article, a series of articles starting out on the economics of development. And fundamentally it questions the point, what is development? Development is for whom? If you say development is achieving what, let's say, China or US or Japan have achieved, then if you go back to the proposition, how did they achieve that? What was their standard when they started? So if you wrote a book 200 years back when Japan and these countries were not developed, what would you say? What would you define development as? Worth thinking about, isn't it? And if you go 200 years in future, would you call development, would you define development in the same kind of parameters as you're developing today? So which is the truth? Which is reality? So I think life for all of us is going to be a constant quest of trying to find out what is true, and what should be. And with those words, I would like to end by the final blessing that our scriptures give us. And that is simply say, Athaso Dharma Jigyasa, which is so meaningful. Atha means the Guru tells the student that Athaso Dharma Jigyasa, Atha, therefore, Asau, in you. Dharma is not religion, knowledge. Thus, Jigyasa is in that context a permanent burning fire for knowledge. So let us say, Athaso Dharma Jigyasa. Thank you very much.
Dr. Narayan, I have seen you in many incarnations going back to mid-70s, but your felicity with Sanskrit this time beats what I have seen of you on many other experiences, and I'm so pleased that it is so. There is a book which some of you may have read, What They Don't Teach You at Harvard. This conclave is about what they don't teach you in the classes. But this is something which presses everyone's toes. And I have been in iteration with this with the governor over at least 1 year. And he gave me many mandates, not only on the content, but he said, get somebody from Chennai, get somebody from Mumbai. His all India vision on any academic endeavor is very difficult to meet. We struggle hard. You'll be happy to note, sir, we have measured up to a small extent. I'm not going to waste your time and attempt the impossible to say the trite and the obvious about Vorasab. Vorasab is Vorasab. There is nothing more to be said about it. Over to the privilege of listening to him. Vorasab.
My very old friend, Dr. Narayan, I'm meeting him after a considerable period. As he mentioned, we worked together during what I could look back and say were also not very easy days. As compared to today, perhaps they were equally troublesome and equally problematic in the sense that Parliament was incessantly in turmoil, and one after the other in the late 80s to early 90s, there were a series of so-called exposure of scandals and cases of corruption or dishonesty, and it was a difficult time. But Dr. Narayan held his position very firm wherever he worked. His Excellency Dr. Diwan, Professor Gautam, distinguished participants, my old friend Professor Talat Ahmed, Professor Sudhir Jain, ladies and gentlemen. While I am very happy to be associated with this morning's event, which, as you just heard from Professor Gautam, also seeks to commemorate the memory of Acharya Ravindranath Sharma, a person whom I have never met, but who has been known far and wide in my time, not only in North India and beyond, as a person, very eminent person in the realm of literature, poetics, linguistics, drama, made great contributions. Was a teacher in London University, translated Chekhov in new languages, made enormous contribution. So I was told by Professor Gautam that he had wanted to time today's event with the birth centenary of Acharya ji. Now, Dr. Narayan has given some thoughts about learning in the larger context. In the past, almost a decade, as my two Vice-Chancellor friends would bear out, I've had the occasion to be more exposed to formal learning, formal education, which may not be much learning, but is formal education. And education is only, if I may say so, a segment, a component of learning. No matter how complete education is, it is not total learning, because learning is a process. It does not come to an end. You may call it lifelong learning, you may call it what some universities and institutions have been calling continuing learning. Some in the medical arena, I've heard the word continuing education. They call it CME, continuing medical education. There have been various attempts, quite different in their own way, of updating knowledge. But if you don't get lost in within the academic parameters, which have their own compulsions of acquisition of knowledge within a given time period, and that acquisition being tested through examinations and other media, other instrumentation, to see whether the person who is seeking education has actually acquired education in the manner you are seeking to test it. That does not always end up in knowing whether the person concerned, the student, at one or the other level, or even at the higher level, of doctoral level or above, whether he has actually gained or enlarged his capacities as a human being in terms of his understanding and his abilities. But nonetheless, in such a large context of several billion people in the world, and half of them being youth. Educational arena has its own challenges, its own problems. So we cannot be too choosy on how education is being actually imparted at various levels. But I would say from recent experiences that it is not satisfactory. If one doesn't want to use the word unsatisfactory or deficient, it is definitely not satisfactory. Now I remember many decades ago when I was in junior school in an area which is now Pakistan. In that not very large school, not very large number of students, on the walls of the school there was a tradition in those days which I don't find now because we have more modern schools and their walls are not disfigured by writing. Or if there is writing on the wall, it's a very different kind. There used to be adages, homilies, aphorisms. And one of them, interestingly, why it was written, because most of the children in the school were very young. Live and learn. Then another wall, live and let live. The teacher was a scholar of Islamic thought, a bearded gentleman with a walking stick, very learned in languages, Persian, Arabic. He had got all this written on the walls. Very interesting homilies. One of them I recall when I spoke to Professor Gautam last night to find out more about this conclave. Was very interestingly, now today, in today's context, I don't know whether it makes sense. One of these things, live and let live, live and learn, was dangers past, God forgotten. Now, it may not make very much sense, but if you think a little more about it, then it makes some sense. So to come back to live and learn, I think that lifelong learning is a title by itself. And you can think about it and see how you wish to interpret it. But if one doesn't go into the macro parameters, aspects of lifelong learning, and focuses at the individual level, at the plane of individuality, then in today's terms I would say that there is unceasing pressure on human beings of all ages, if they wish to survive and survive with reasonable success, to catch up with the modern times. Now, I'll give you a personal example. When I was educated, or I got into service, we didn't have computers. Then a period came when there were computers. Then we went beyond computers. Today you have these very handy gadgets which go into your pocket, mobile telephones, and the upper end of these machines, you can virtually do a whole day's work sitting wherever you are, under a tree, in a train or a bus, or in your bedroom or wherever, in the veranda. And those who are acquainted with how to operate these gadgets can do wonders. They transact business, they give official decisions, files are communicated to them. I've seen some very bright government servants who have transported most of their important official documents on these equipments, and they keep on processing certain matters, even policy issues, and giving directions to their colleagues and juniors, submitting papers to the superiors through these machines, these small gadgets. So if one has to survive and survive with reasonable happiness and satisfaction, I think there is unending pressure to meet the challenges of upgrading your skills, such as they may be, because when a particular person is born in a particular time, he receives education of a particular kind, and then depending upon the course of his life, he may not be technology savvy, he may not be very conversant with what is required. So the challenges of acquisition of skills, of diverse kind of demands that there are there with every passing day. With reference to this lifelong learning, Professor Gautam had given me a piece of paper which referred to the limits of knowledge and the evolution of Homo sapiens. Whether man is the risen ape, if one doesn't go into the other theory of he's a fallen angel, then in the evolutionary process, evolutionary theory, we have evolved from the first vertebrates into Homo sapiens. And sapiens, by very definition, is supposed to imbue us with a certain level of wisdom, which makes us different from the animal world. Now, in the current context of very speedily emerging artificial intelligence, robotics, question again arises, what are the limits of lifelong learning? If it is in sequence of what is your own past, if it is linear to what is your inheritance, what is your initial acquisition of knowledge or learning, then will it end up anywhere or you start all over again? Because this is a brand new world, a world which is very exciting, very challenging, and also very frightening. Because if artificial intelligence proceeds at the pace it is today, then they are perhaps not far off, then human beings start becoming defunct, and they are no longer needed. In the state where I am working, we have last few years worked hard to set up a hospital out of the funds which are the donations which are made to a local shrine, a pilgrimage that we have in Jammu. Now we have been advertising and trying to attract doctors from all over the country. People are not keen to leave Bangalore and Pune and Hyderabad and Delhi to come and work where I am working. But two young boys came on the condition, they sent me an email, they sent me their credentials, that we are willing to come, provided you acquire equipment for robotic surgery, because we do surgeries through these equipments. If you don't have the money or you're not principally inclined, then thank you very much, we are not interested. So we considered this matter, we looked at the cost, we looked at the training part, we looked at the paramedics who will be required, the other staff required. It amounted to a neat sum. But anyway, we decided, we have placed orders, it cost several crores. Now, I've never seen robotic surgery earlier. I've seen some videographs, some documentaries, but it's remarkable. It's remarkable. You see, it's replacing a human being. Highly trained doctors are replaced. Though, of course, they feed the machine what it has to be fed. That's itself very accurate, very precise, and very highly skilled and technological task. But what I'm saying is that if you look at it from the philosophic plane of lifelong learning, then at least I'm at a loss. I belong to the wrong generation. In this room, I'm far older than anybody else here. So I find it difficult to comprehend with adequate feeling of easiness of where we are heading as Homo sapiens. And if you correlate what I am saying to what is happening in the rest of the world, then that is cause for greater worry. Whether lifelong learning at the individual level or in the macro sense, larger scale, would be worth what we think it is worth if other things are going to be as they are today. I don't know whether I made myself clear, but I feel that if our globe does not regain the balance which is required for Homo sapiens to be able to live useful lives and make productive contributions in the social community sense, then in the national and regional sense, and then worldwide, then we have serious challenges ahead, which would need to be discussed and answered. And I hope that some of these things will attract attention in the discussions during the remainder part of the day. I would, in the end, thank Professor Gautam for having given me the opportunity to be associated with this morning function. I still remain, unlike my colleague Dr. Narayan, who is very knowledgeable, I don't have the education he has, by the way. I belong to that period when we had the partition of the country, so I missed many years of my education. So I have serious gaps in understanding. I yet believe that we have upcoming challenges as human beings, whether we live in country A or country B, which require a great deal of serious consideration, which goes far beyond the classical definitions of geopolitics. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
It's customary to respond with a couple of sentences to any statement from the inaugural perspective. I will not rush in where the angels fear to tread. Vora Sahab doesn't need an Boswell, but I consciously took the decision to do a video recording and an audio recording of what we do here, to get it transcribed and then go in for a publication for wider dissemination. The Rishi aspect of Vora Sahab I haven't very often seen. Rishi is defined as the seer, a futuristic vision of the situation, and you don't have to go to the mountains to become a Rishi. It was a great journey listening to you, sir. Thank you for finding time. May I request Diwan Sahab to wrap up on our behalf. I have great pleasure in giving to you Dr. Sanjay Diwan.
His Excellency, Sri N.N. Vora, respected Dr. Narayan, respected Dr. Gautam, I am grateful for this opportunity to reflect and articulate a general feeling I sense in this hall. After the observations made by the three distinguished gentlemen, I wear two hats in this conclave. One is, of course, that of Honorary Consul General of the Republic of Cabo Verde, and the other is an honorary member of the Advisory Committee of the respected Acharya Devendranath Sharma Birth Centenary Celebrations. Of this, Shri J.P. Nadda, the Honorable Union Health Minister, is the patron. As some of you would be aware, the centenary celebrations were launched in the very same hall on July 6, 2017, in a solemn, dignified, and moving set of activities for little over an hour. It included, amongst other things, a replay of an interview of Acharya Ji, various recalls, and of course tributes. I have kept in touch with the journey of this committee's work through at least 5 cities of India and more. However, today, like every event, the centenary celebration is poised to be a unique experience. The topic, the participants, and the sheer execution of the conclave draws admiration. I have had occasions to contribute. The remarks made by chief guest are unique for their simple, thought-provoking character. That, however, is of course what His Excellency Vora Sahib represents. Many of us have watched him from a distance at work in many diverse areas. His dedication, sincerity, and conviction draws huge admiration. Thank you, sir, for coming and gracing this occasion. Respected Dr. Narayan is a rare breed cutting across careers in administration, teaching, and research. His exposure to academic environment from IIT Delhi to Cambridge have truly given him a wide spectrum to draw upon. His remarks are characteristically focused and will help the thought processes of lifelong learning, for which we are grateful, sir. Incidentally, his book on the Dravid movement in Tamil Nadu is poised to be path-breaking. Thank you, sir, for coming all the way from Chennai to share your thoughts. I do not know if I am to thank respected Dr. Gautam, who like a human dynamo has moved matters for this conclave. This is the way he works, wherever he is. He has huge reservoir of energy, which is matched only by his scholarship and wisdom. It is good to have a person like him leading such an event. Thank you all the delegates. We are conscious that people have travelled distances not only from within the country, but abroad from Malaysia, UAE, China, and elsewhere. You have come to this collective effort. Mercifully, this is not one of the many summits which Delhi gets to hold through the year. Those are places where the page 3 characters congregate, and it's a different game altogether. Though that also fulfills the purpose. This, however, is a serious exploratory exercise. To this, hopefully each one of you will contribute. Thank you for making the effort. I would now request all of you to join us for the tea before we begin the pre-launch plenary. Thank you all.
Thank you, Diwan Sahab. Before we break for tea, it is my privilege to acknowledge what we have. There are 43 people in this room, and to have a share of Vora Sahab 1 by 43 for a full hour is an experience in itself. To have Dr. Narayan with us does not need a comment. May I request that I be given an opportunity to share a couple of books with all the people on the dais, because what else is there to share save books and people's ideas. Vora Sahib had mandated 10 to 11, and some of us do literally set our watches by his movements. We have 5 minutes to go before 11. We took exactly 60 minutes of your time, and I hope someday when I grow up, I will be able to say, मैं Vora Sahib की तरह लगता हूँ ना.